And Giants finally have their new head coach in Brian Daboll. And if you're new to the channel, I actually mentioned this in my previous video when I was talking about the Giants making their GM hire. I said, look, they're going to get Brian Daboll. I said it just makes way too much sense. There's a connection there with the Bills. And lo and behold, I was spot on that. And again, this is a hire that I saw coming. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, give us a follow, give us a like. Always would love your support. The handle is in the chat at Rich Sports Talk. The link is also included in there. We also did our top 50 big board this week for the upcoming NFL draft. If you're interested in the draft and want to find out who we rank as the top prospects, go to the community tab and click on the link. I promise you, you are not going to want to miss that. Thank you again so much for joining us here. Brian Daboll officially introduced today as the new head coach of the New York Football Giants. And this is a big day for the Giants. And again, so much went into this offseason. And I said this at the very beginning of the offseason for the New York Giants, which was this team basically needs to hit a perfect offseason. They need to ace the general manager, ace the head coach, and ace the draft because, again, they don't have room for error with their current cap situation. So far, we don't know what Brian Day will be as the head coach. We don't know what the new GM will be as a GM, but I do think for the positions and for their backgrounds, I think the Giants couldn't have done much better. I really don't. Again, I didn't think Jim Harbaugh was going to come here. I think he's only going to come to the perfect situation that works for him. Brian Flores, I think, would have been a great head coach. But again, the one question you would have is where does he rank in developing a young quarterback? Eric Bieniemy, I would have liked too. I think he's done a very good job with the development of Patrick Mahomes. But all things considered, the second that they brought in staff from Buffalo, you just knew the Giants were likely going to go with Brian Daboll. You knew he was going to be the number one option, and he is there. And there's a lot I like about this hire. And I said this last year during the head coaching process that Brian Daboll should get a head coaching job last year because of his involvement with Josh Allen. And we have seen, especially over time, over the last couple of years, the growth of Josh Allen has been attributed to Brian Daboll. And I mean, again, we've seen Josh Allen go from kind of the wild stallion, a guy with a lot of potential, not a ton of accuracy, overly athletic, to now being considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And look, Brian Daboll has a huge hand in that. And again, when you're hiring a head coach as for an NFL team, the biggest thing that you need to do is you need to hire a head coach. You need to hire a head coach that fits the need of your team. And what did the Giants need? The Giants needed a new coach that would help develop their offense. They needed a coach that would maximize the quarterback position because, again, you look at the Giants, they're either going to be in one of three positions, and all three require what Brian Daboll offers, which is a guy that's helped develop a quarterbacks. Number one, if they keep Daniel Jones, it's to get the most out of Daniel Jones. Number two, if they draft a quarterback this year, and I'll get to what they said in the press conference about Daniel Jones in a little bit, you have a coach to develop a rookie quarterback. Or number three, you can maximize Daniel Jones for a year, and if you move on to a new quarterback next year, you still have a head coach and an offense that will stay the same. Because again, you look around the league right now, one of the biggest things is you need consistency for a young quarterback. And we're seeing it already. Some young quarterbacks are already getting hurt. Justin Fields, who was a rookie last year, is going to get a whole new coaching staff, whole new offense to learn his second year. Same thing with basically Trevor Lawrence. New head coach, new offense, new scheme to learn in his second year. Mac Jones, even though he's staying with Belichick, Josh McDaniels now leaving. He's going to be hurt because Josh McDaniels had that scheme. Now, who do they bring in? Do they bring back Bill O'Brien? Who did the Patriots bring in for their offense coordinator? Like, the funny thing is, of all the rookie quarterbacks that played last year, Zach Wilson might be in the best situation because his head coach and his OC aren't changing. He doesn't have to learn a new playbook. He doesn't have to learn a whole new offense. He can go into year 2 with hopefully better personnel around him. But again, that's not changing. And I do think that's important for the Giants because my biggest fear, and I said this at the beginning of the offseason for the New York Giants, is the Giants have gone into the position where they were kind of resting on their laurels as being this well-respected franchise. They were an organization that basically was saying, we do everything the right way, even though the last few years have been a disaster. And I said at the beginning of this process, they need to go outside the organization. They had to go outside the Parcells Belichick tree. They had to go out and make a change. They had to do something different because, again, they need a fresh set of eyes and they need a fresh set of perspective. And I thought that they did a very good job of that. And not only the head coach, but also the general manager. Now, the big thing is, and the big comment that everyone's taking is from both the press conference for the Giants, is that they've made the declaration that Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback next year. Don't take their word for it. Because again, a lot of things can change. They could fall in love with the kid during this process. And another thing too is last year at the same time, again, I use the Jets and the Giants. I think they're very similar into where they are in terms of franchises, but also because they're going through very similar processes. But last year, the Jets, Robert Saleh came in. His first thing is, I love Sam Darnold. I believe in Sam Darnold. I believe I can win with Sam Darnold. 2 months later, basically, they traded Sam Darnold because they fell in love with Zach Wilson. I don't think this is as good of a quarterback class. But what if Brian Daboll falls in love with Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett? I mean, Giants could easily get a quarterback. So, again, if you're the Giants, you can't rule anything off the table. And just because they say Daniel Jones is the quarterback, even if it's just for a year, that they're not committing to him long term. And again, the one thing I like about Daboll is if you were to tell me who's a coach that could get the most out of him, I would say of all the coaching candidates, it'd be Brian Daboll, even over Eric Bieniemy, because, and I am prefacing this very carefully, guys. So listen, Daniel Jones is similar to Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a much better player, runner, bigger, physical, bigger arm, a better player. But you look at when they kind of came into the league and what they are. Very athletic quarterbacks that like to run, better runners than people give them credit for. And you look at what Brian Daboll did. He developed a system where he fit Josh Allen into, and you watch the Bills play. Allen's always moving. Whether it's on passes, runs, like they always have him in some kind of motion to trip up the defense or try to confuse the defense. And I do believe that if you were to tell me who's one quarterback that could get the most out of him, because even Eric Bieniemy, like I love Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes doesn't even run as much as Josh Allen. I do believe that Daboll's going to utilize that athleticism to his benefit. And if they do keep Daniel Jones, they're going to use that athleticism to hopefully help with his development and also to help with his accuracy. Look, I don't think Daniel Jones is long-term for this Giant team, even if he has a good season. I don't trust the injury history. I think he's a good quarterback, not great. You look at him coming out of college, had a great offensive mind in college and still threw for under 60% in the ACC. And you look, he's not a highly accurate passer. Again, I do think, though, if there's one coach to get the most out of him, it's Brian Daboll. And I do think that they will run with it for 1 year, but who knows what will happen. Some chats. Again, guys, reach out to us in the chat. Would love to hear from you guys. There's so much to talk about. I really appreciate it. I'll get to your chat in a moment. But again, just a friendly reminder, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our Twitter page is in there as well in the chat. Make sure you give us a follow for our updates and for our comments. I'm also posting something special in the chat too. Basically posting our top 50 big board. So if you're curious on my opinions of the top quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, that is now in there as well. So you can click on that and go to that page. And I go through my first big board. Of course, that will change, but it goes through my top 51 prospects for this upcoming year. In real life, HDR, I think that's what it means. I think the Giants hit a home run, hit this one out of the park. If anyone can get the best out of Dan Jones, it's Dabble. Absolutely. Daboll is, to me, the best coach for that situation. And again, I also like it too that he was hired by a GM from Buffalo, because I've said this covering the Jets for years is that the Jets, their biggest issue for the last decade is they've never had a GM and a head coach who work together and be on the same page. And even when Adam Gase brought in Joe Douglas, it was still kind of a weird marriage. But this last year, you saw for the first time when you had a head coach and a GM on the same page and what kind of players they're looking for, the Jets had their best draft and probably since the Brickashaw Ferguson Nick Mangold draft because they got a lot of good players in that draft. And I do think there's been a big disconnect with the Giants. I think that's one of the reasons they've had such poor drafts is because Dave Gettleman didn't care who the head coach was. He was going to pick the players who he wanted. And again, you need a GM and a head coach to be on the same page, to value players the same way. And I do think that you're going to get that with the Giants. And it's important because, again, the draft's going to be how this team improves. Even if they cut Nate Solder, they're going to be in cap hell. They're not going to have room to go out and make moves in free agency. And I keep hearing that the Giants should trade for like a Russell Wilson or a big quarterback. I don't think they could do it with the cap space. So again, the draft is where you're going to have to hit. And to do that, you not only need to have a good GM, but you need a GM that gets the right ingredients for the head coach. I always say coaches, for coaches, it's basic. They're chefs and the GMs are restaurant managers. If you're a restaurant manager, you have to give the best ingredients and the best ingredients for the kind of chef you have. If you have an Italian chef that is an expert in Italian cuisine, you're not going to go all of a sudden give them French cuisine and try to say like, hey, our special night is French cuisine. It's like, that's not going to work. I mean, the cook could probably make something good, still might be able to make something serviceable, but it's not going to maximize what they do best. Giant Opinion Sports. If he has a good season, you franchise him and make him replicate it. Talk about Daniel Jones. Again, I do think that that is a positive if you get the most out of Daniel Jones. And it also buys you more time because you're able to use the draft capital this year to go out and make this roster significantly better. I had an episode earlier today where I unveiled my top 50 big board. That's on the channel as well. And I talked about some of the big prospects. And one of the tangents I talked around I want to say the 30-minute mark was I got into the Giants because one of the questions I was asked is, what do you think the Giants are going to do? And I said, look, if I'm the Giants and they're going to run it back with Daniel Jones, I'm taking 2 offensive linemen with the top 2 picks. Because, again, outside of Andrew Thomas, I believe all their offensive linemen, even Will Hernandez, are backups. I mean, I do think Hernandez, if you got 2 or 3 starters, you could survive with him at guard, but you really need to improve that offensive line. And that's why I said I thought that the Giants could go after like Tyler Linderbaum, who's a kid I love out of Iowa, Charles Cross, Akeem Okonwa, and Evan Neal. But again, I'm starting to get the suspicion that 2 of those tackles aren't getting past the 4th pick. So with the Giants picking 5th, they're probably going to have to take a lesser lineman or try to trade back to get maybe a guard in the teens and then Linderbaum with the 7th pick. Because again, I just think the Giants' offensive line is so bad, and and even if Daniel Jones, you find out he's not the long-term answer, what you do is at least you've built up an offensive line so that you can then go out and you can get a rookie quarterback, and it's a better situation. I'm a believer in Shane Lemieux. Yeah, no, Shane Lemieux isn't bad. Again, in an ideal world, it's like Hernandez, though. I believe you can get away with both of those players, but again, you're going to need a really good tackles, and a really good center. And again, if the Giants go out and draft a tackle and draft a center, could they get away with Hernandez and Lemieux inside for a year? Probably. Again, their offensive line is just so bad that they need to invest significant capital. And again, I do think you're going to see that because you look at how they built around Josh Allen. I mean, we all know the sexy moves of getting Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, but things that people don't talk about is how much the Bills invested in free agency in the offensive line. And did they necessarily go out and get the best offensive lineman? No, but they made significant strides. And again, they always drafted offensive linemen in the mid rounds, developed them. And even and got offensive linemen out of excess. I still remember when the Jets cut Brian Winters, like they brought in Brian Winters, and Brian Winters at the time was still an NFL starting caliber guard, But basically, when the Bills brought him in, because they were so loaded, he was their backup guard. And again, it was a significant step because they're not only improving the offensive line, but improving significant depth. I don't want Hernandez drafted guard. Well, you can check out my big board at richsportstock.com, link in the chat, and see what guards I do have available. Again, the Giants are going to draft a guard in the top 10. Um, if I had to guess, Charles Cross might be there, but he's kind of a weird fit because again, he's purely left tackle. I don't think you're going to move Andrew Thomas to the right tackle. You could maybe trade down and get like a guard in the teens. Again, I really like I know Penning's more of a tackle, but Kenyon Green, Texas A&M, played tackle a lot, but probably kicks inside better the guard. I really like Zion Johnson out of Boston College. If the Giants could maybe trade up because they're going to have such a high pick in the second round, like if they can move back into the first round and get him like in the late 20s, early 30s, he's a more than capable starting guard that I do think will help. I don't want Hernandez drafted guard. I'd like to Neal or Conwell with the fifth pick, trade back the seventh pick and grab guard like Kenyon Green. Kenyon Green's good. Cross needs to bulk up. Um, Cross is a little bit lighter, but again, like he fits that left tackle. He's like probably a little bit smaller in terms of weight, but he's got quick feet. He's strong enough to anchor the left tackle spot. Again, I just talked about Johnson from BC. If you want to talk about him, I think he'd be a good pick in the late first round. The Giants can trade back in. I don't think either of those tackles are going to be there, Giant Opinion Sports. Unfortunately, I really do believe that I do a bunch of Jets mock drafts. I'm doing a Giants one soon. Again, I've waited on the Giants because I've wanted to see who the head coach was and who the GM was. Because again, I do think the draft is going to change because they currently run the 3-4. I do believe Dable's going to change that to the 4-3 Buffalo run. So again, does that add more needs for an edge rusher in the draft? Do they maybe try to draft an edge rusher early with the seventh pick to fit the new scheme? I mean, that's something you have to consider for the draft. I'll get to Trevor Penning in a minute. Good question. But again, I really do believe that those two tackles, Akonwo and Neal, are going to go in the top 4 because my thought process is one of them is going number 1 because I know the pass rushers are really good in the draft and they're the two best prospects. But again, all those coaches, like most of the coaches that got fired this year, it was because their quarterbacks didn't develop. Trevor Lawrence got the snot being out of him last year. Like, if you're going to keep your job in Jacksonville, you have to make Trevor Lawrence work. And yeah, a good defense and a good pass rush will help, but you know what will help better? Making sure he's not on the ground. So I have a feeling Neal or Conwell is going to be the first pick to Jacksonville. The lines I doubt go offensive line. They could, but again, I think they'll go with the pass rusher. Houston, God knows, no one knows what Houston's doing, but and part of me is thinking they might go tackle because of Davis Mills. And if the two pass rushers are off the board, like if Thibodeau falls to the Jets, I do think the Jets will take Thibodeau or Hutchinson. They'll take one of the pass rushers and they'll skip along with the offensive line if they have. But I do think, again, if the two pass rushers are off the board and the Jets can't trade out a 4 for a good package, they're going to take an insurance tackle for Mekhi Becton or just improve the offensive line. Because again, look at their last 2 years under Joe Douglas. They've drafted offensive linemen in high, and he believes in building in the trenches. So, again, I know Cross will definitely be there at 5. I wouldn't hate Linderbaum at 7, but then again, if they're changing to 4-3, do you get Ojabo or do you get Karlaftis to play the defensive end position in the new 4-3 with the 7th pick? That's a lot to consider as well. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Trevor Penning? Like, I really like Trevor Penning. Again, you can look at my big board right now. Penning on my big. I'm not going to give everything away because I want you guys to look into it. Like I can't just give you everything for free. But currently, he's 23 on my big board. I really like him. To me, I consider the offensive lineman like the big 3. Cross, Okunwu, and Neal. And then there's the next section, and he's on the top of that next section. Again, it's kind of close. Um, I looked at, he played in this FCS, which is a big concern, but again, he bullied people. I think the Senior Bowl, if he plays well in the Senior Bowl against some of these more seasoned and Power Five defensive ends and D tackles, I do think it's going to help his stock. Unbelievable athleticism. Again, the one thing you worry about is I love the kid because he always plays with a chip on his shoulder. You can tell he's always pissed off, and I love that for an offensive lineman. The one thing I would worry about too is the Giants. You kind of want someone that can come in right away and make an impact. I feel like Penning, if Dable brings in an offensive coach that can develop him, I do feel you can develop into a very good tackle. But again, it's going to require a lot of work. A lot of these guys in this draft, there's a lot of work involved. I'm not going to lie. Um, but again, like I do think he could struggle early, and could that hurt his confidence? Because we kind of saw with Andrew Thomas, and Thomas has luckily rebounded. But like if Penning comes out and gives up a couple sacks early in his career, is the media going to get him? Are they going to kill him? Again, like even though he might have the higher ceiling, would Kenyon Green be a little safer pick? Because again, Green might fit the Giants better just because of the versatility, because he can play tackle and guard. I like him better as a guard, but the Giants can play him at right tackle. They can play him at right guard. Or if the right tackle gets hurt, they can kick him over to right tackle. I mean, that versatility. And again, I really like Johnson out of Boston College. I think he's the best true guard in the draft. Again, I look at the two in front of him. There, you can play him at tackle, and they probably have higher upside at the tackle position. But again, Johnson from Boston College, I feel is just going to be a plug and play starter, and a guy that you get have a good quality starting guard for a decade, and you just set him a guard and you forget about it. So I do like him as well. Let's see. I got Pang in the 15 to 20 area. I could see him reaching for him, the good reps. Yeah, I agree. Like the reps for him, again, there's a lot you like on tape. I mean, there's a lot of intriguing offensive linemen. Again, the Giants, I wouldn't rule them out in round two. I think there's a lot of guys. And again, you're going to have to probably trade up pretty well to get Penning, but there's also a lot of guys you could look in the early second round too. Uh, Darian Kinnard, the guard out of Kentucky. Um, Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle at Central Michigan. He's another big guy to watch at the Senior Bowl. And look, he's intriguing because he only played 1 year at tackle. I mean, he's a converted tight end, but you look at the athleticism he has, it's unbelievable. But again, I don't know if the Giants are going to want to take a risk on a guy that, might have a higher ceiling, but might take more time to develop. One guy I really love is Daniel Falele, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. I mean, he's a mountain. And like we throw that term around, and I know people think Evan Neal's a big boy, but he's 6'8" and 380 pounds. And he lost 20 pounds to get down to 3A. He used to be 400. So he is a bulldozer. Again, unbelievable athlete for his size. He does need to work on his pass blocking protection. He needs a lot of technique. Again, this is a kid, he didn't start playing football until like his junior year of high school. But again, I just look at the size and the physicality. And the Giants already have a left tackle. So if you put him at the right tackle spot, I mean, Saquon Barkley might really appreciate running behind a 380-pound mountain at the right tackle spot. So again, I do think there's some tackles and offensive linemen that the Giants could get in the second round. But I do think Falele is another guy too. I'm really high on. Again, he's higher on my list just because of the physicality. I've seen it. I've followed him since high school. And again, they don't make humans that are 6'8", 6'9", 380 pounds, and his athleticism. Like he moves and runs like someone that's 50 pounds lighter. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Again, he's also been a constant start in Minnesota. He's gotten a lot more reps because that's the other thing too with some of these guys that I'm looking at. Like they didn't get a ton of reps, and even even who were we talking about earlier? Not Penning, Kenyon Green. Kenyon Green's a tough one too because again, because of the problems at A&M, he never really settled at a position. Like Evan Neal settle at left tackle this year. The year before, he was settled at right tackle. The year before that, he was settled between the two guard positions. Like he got plenty of reps at all of them. I mean, it was almost like week to week, you would see Green, like 1 week he's left tackle, 1 week he's right tackle. Like again, you love the versatility, but it's also gets hard to get really great gauge on him because he's moving around so much. You're kind of like, uh, you know, I did not like Jackson Kirkland, and I've seen him on big boards going in the first round. Um, yeah, like on my, again on my big board too. No, I also tend to value the offensive lineman a bit higher too. Trying to use the lowest rated in my top 50. Yeah, again, like I did a lot of the quarterbacks. And the quarterbacks were even a bit of a stretch too. Again, I think that I don't really think there's a great quarterback in this class. Again, I think each of them has their own faux pas, and there's only really one quarterback that's a great trait that stands out to me. And again, I have a lot of the receivers stacked up in this draft. And again, I really think a lot of this draft's going to be about fit. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of guys go early. Yeah, you're right. Kenyon played every position but center. Um, which again, good versatility, and I think the Giants might want that. And I do think that the Dable hire is great because again, you need someone to elevate this offense. I don't think the defense is necessarily the issue with the Giants. Again, it's going to be interesting to see who he brings in as his D coordinator. Um, but again, they have so much invested in that defense. Adoree Jackson, Leonard Williams. I'm interested to see what they do with the 4-3 because again, Leonard Williams is kind of now a weird fit. Again, I wonder what they do if they do go to the 4-3, how they attack that this offseason. Because again, Leonard Williams basically his entire career has played the 3-4 defensive end position. I think he could thrive as a D tackle, but I don't think he could be an end. I don't think he's got the quickness or the burst to be a pass rusher on that. I mean, in certain situations you can move him around, but um again, I mean, you look at like the Giants, I mean, they've drafted a lot for the 3-4, and I wonder how they're going to address that. Because again, one of the players that they drafted last year, Ojulari, I really liked. I think he was a great fit in the 3-4, but now you wonder how does he fit? Like again, like you could see him being an edge, but is he an every down edge? Like, is he because again, he's 6'2, 250 pounds. I mean, the weight really isn't as much of an issue. It's more the size. Again, like in pass rushing packages, it works, but can you play him every down in the 4-3? I'm not sure. So again, I mean, do you draft the defensive end? Do you go with Karloff this early? So I'm really interested to see. I mean, could Dable technically stay with the 3-4? I mean, it's possible. Like, I'm really interested to see what he does because again, it all depends on these head coaches because we've seen head coaches in the past control their unit, especially if they're specialized in a unit. Like again, I use the Jets as an example. Like one of the things that worked well for Robert Saleh is that even though he's a defensive coach, he basically said like, "I'm going to be the head coach, and even though I'm the head coach, I have a system. Like this is the defensive scheme I want to run, and this is the offensive scheme. So even if he loses coaches, at least you know what the scheme isn't going to change." The question I have for Brian Daboll is, will the defensive scheme change? And will it change based on the defensive coordinator? Because there have been a lot of coaches that sometimes will just say, just take care of the defense. I'm just going to focus on the offense. And I'm really interested to see how he says it. Because again, you can say what you want in the press conference, but your actions will always speak louder than words. So again, if we see the Giants start to draft 4-3 personnel, then we know they're going to a 4-3 personnel like the Bills run. If they stick, but again, and also I'm interested to see who they're going to bring in as the defensive coordinator. And again, like 3-4 in the 4-3 base. I mean, so much of it, like no one really plays a base defense anymore. But again, if you're looking to play with 4 down linemen the majority of the time, do the Giants feel like they need to invest in another defensive lineman? And again, I mean, that could also impact how they draft at the top of the draft, how Dable attacks, how they put together this roster. Because again, like I do think that the defense of all the positions sorry, is probably going to get addressed the least in the draft because they have so much money invested in the defense already. And again, outside maybe adding a pass rusher on the defensive line or a linebacker, and even this they have a lot of great linebackers in this class. I'm really high in the linebacker class, but even the Giants, like I'd be wary to draft a linebacker just because this offense needs so much. And again, like Evan Ingram's likely not back. So what do you do for weapons? Because again, I do think that Dable's an offensive coach. They're going to invest a lot of capital in the offense, offensive line, tight end, potentially a wide receiver. Like if a again, I could see a couple of these wide receivers slipping in around two. If the Giants feel they're good enough on the offensive line, maybe they go receiver or get a tight end in the second round. I mean, I also wouldn't rule out a running back in the third, fourth, or fifth round because again, you don't know Saquon's health. You don't know if he's going to be able to play 17 games. And you look at Buffalo, like they want to run the ball, whether it's with the quarterback or with the running back. So they want to run the football, and a lot of that controls with the ground game. What do you think of Graham come back? Dabble said he if he doesn't get the Minnesota job, he's coming back. Again, I really like Patrick Graham. A part of me thinks he deserves a head coaching job. Um, again, I feel like there's a lot of coaches that deserve a head coaching job. Again, I think Brian Flores, Eric Bieniemy have paid their dues. I mean, Patrick Graham, it's fine. I think last year he was a bigger candidate than this year. Um, again, like we have to see. Again, actions to me speak louder than words. Like he can say he's coming back, but if he doesn't get the job and doesn't come back, again, a lot of it depends. Like who knows? Maybe there's someone from Buffalo he might have in mind, and it works out that they can bring someone from Buffalo's defensive. Maybe it's one of the defensive line coaches or one of the defensive back coaches that he feels has a high potential. So again, I do think Graham would be a big ask. But then again, if Patrick Graham is brought back, then I do think that does tell you something about Brian Daboll as a head coach, which can work, but can be a little concerning, which is if you have a coach just taking care of one unit. I mean, again, I would personally like a head coach that kind of oversees everything. And again, they're not going to be in charge of every unit, but you kind of want more of a CEO. But we've seen this with work before. I mean, Sean McVay even in Los Angeles, I think works a lot like this, where he basically takes care of the offense and he feels good enough and confident enough in his defensive staff to take care of it. But I mean, if that's a situation, then I could see the Giants basically going, okay, well, we feel confident enough in our defensive staff that we'll be able to take care of it and that they can handle it. But that's one thing I'm interested in. If they bring back Patrick Graham, I think it basically tells you Brian Dable's just going to say, look, I'm in charge of the offense. I'm the head coach, but we're each in charge of our own units. I mean, it can work, but again, I prefer kind of more of the CEO type, but that's just personally me. But again, I do think if you bring Patrick Graham back, you don't have to change the scheme. You have someone the players respect. And, again, I do think it helps with the continuity, but we'll have to see how that all works out. Again, I just feel like the Giants, like their offense is so bad and it's such an offensive lean. Now you have an offensive head coach. Like I wouldn't be shocked if every pick outside maybe one or two are offense, just because again, you have an offensive head coach. He's going to want to invest in the offense. And again, I mean, I see we need an edge rusher, but the thing though is if push comes to shove, I do think they're going to go offense. And again, like that's with the first 2 round picks, I think that'll be a great example where if they're picking seventh, do they take a pass rusher or do they take an offensive lineman? I think you almost lean toward offensive line just because it's so bereft of talent that you have to do that in order to make it a place where Daniel Jones can actually succeed. And if you're going to bring in a quarterback, that next quarterback has some protection and has some weapons and has some bit of something to work with. Again, I do think this Giant defense has been good enough without a true edge rusher. Aguilar, I do think can develop as an edge rusher in the 3-4. To me, he's the wild card. And a lot of it comes down to what this new staff believes. And that this is going to be very telling because Again, different regimes and different front offices value players differently. I mean, will they value Leonard Williams the same way? Will they value Ojulari the same way? I mean, could the Giants shock people and trade some pieces from this defense? Because again, they might not fit what they're looking. So a lot of that will be in play. Is there any decent mid-level edge rushers on the market this free agency? Not really. Again, free agency. Unfortunately for the Giants, I think you're not going to see them go that free agency route because they're not going to have the money. But the thing too is, if you're getting an edge rusher where you're talking about the mid market, where you're basically getting them on the cheap, you're either getting veterans who on more closer to the league minimum who are past their prime, or you're getting guys that have had injury issues. Like I think a good example is like Vinny Curry last year, who was like 33. The Jets brought him in to be like a rotational pass rusher, paid him $4 million. Of course, he had the medical issue in training camp, and at the moment is semi-retired. We'll have to see what happens, but that's kind of what type of player you're looking at. You're either getting guys that are past their prime, a little bit long in the tooth. Schoen says they'll clear 50-40 million cap. I again, just looking at the cap situation, I know Giant fans are optimistic, but I'm really curious to see where they're they're going to do that because again, like you look at the cap calculator right now, um, a lot of their cap money's dead. Like, for example, I'm just looking at like some of their cap numbers. I mean, James Bradbury is going to have a 21. Like, can they renegotiate the contracts? That would be really big. But I mean, you look like, for example, um, like for example, James Bradbury. If they cut him, they'd say, they'd save 12 million, but they'd have a $9 million penalty. So again, like you're really only clearing about 3 million in space. Is it really worth it? Leonard Williams you can't cut, and Andrew Thomas you can't cut because they would be negative penalty against the cap. But the same thing with the Dory Jackson. It- I mean Blake Martinez, um, he's got 5.5 million of dead money and only saves 8.25. So you're really getting a $3 million difference. Again, a lot of these contracts, you're only getting like a couple $1 million difference. Um, Logan Ryan, you're getting less than $1 million and you're getting a dead money of $11.5 million. And I don't think you're going to be able to trade anyone. I mean, again, I think the biggest way you can do it is either restructure the contracts or trade people. But you know, we'll see. I think a lot of cuts and restructuring. How does Dable mold an offense around Daniel Jones? Where his strengths? Again, to me, it's his mobility. I do think that they're going to do an offense with a lot of options, a lot of bootlegs, a lot of getting Daniel Jones outside the pocket. It's going to be interesting too because a part of me will say Daniel Jones will run more, but then you've also seen the injury issues with Daniel Jones. And I mean, one thing about Josh Allen is he's a tank. I mean, he's been able to take the punishment early in his career, but I'm I'm interesting to see how they will do that. But it'll be interesting. I think you're going to see him get him outside the pocket, move him around, use that mobility, and even on running plays, if you get him in motion or just moving him left to right, it's something the defense has to account for, especially with Saquon in the backfield, because you don't know if Daniel Jones has the ball. I do think you're going to see them use that athleticism to try to draw the defense out of position. Um, they're going to have to cut players like Bradbury and Martinez. Again, even if you cut them, you're not going to get it's not like a significant saving. And even 12 million, I mean, that's $12 million to kind of address multiple positions. And again, the Giants, you're going to have to look at this and evaluate because don't forget too, this year the Giants had to redo contracts just to make sure they had enough people on the field to suit up technically. So again, yeah, you free up that cap space, but what about the players that you're losing just to fill out the depth? I mean, you might have to try to use that 12 million to get 3 or 4 players on the league minimum just to fill out the roster potentially. Because again, like you look, I mean, we're talking about just like depth pieces, just like backup tackles, backup defensive linemen, backup corners. So yeah, even though they have like only have $12 million in savings, you know, I think you're misunderstanding the cap. You can cut the dead cap in half as well as now spread out over 2 years. Again, it's going to take a lot of cap flexibility, but ideally, like in a perfect world, like let's say the Giants get 30 million. Just because you cut the players and save some money, then who are you replacing them with? Okay, you cut Jackson, you cut Blake Martinez. Now you have to go find a linebacker and a corner. And in free agency, you overpay for everyone. You overpay. You pay B players A money. You play C players B money. So, like, even if you got like a lesser corner than Dory Jackson, you might be playing close to what you were paying him. Blake Martinez, the same thing with a linebacker. You might be paying a middle linebacker 6 or 7 million a year. Again, you're not getting guys for like $2 or $3 million unless you're getting them on the league minimum. And at that point, you want them as depth pieces, not starters. Um, did you see Daboll taking a New England approach, building the offense around the run game with Barkley and having damn only pass once? Yeah, again, like sorry, you saw a lot. Sorry, guys, my throat's just killing me today. You saw that a lot with Josh Allen early in his career. I mean, you've only really seen Josh Allen evolve as a passer the last 2 years. The first couple of years, he was really about the run game, playing off the play action, and hitting the big shot down the field. Again, much more athletic and a bigger arm than Daniel Jones, but I see them using like the running game, especially that's why I think you're going to see them invest heavily in the offensive line in the draft, is because I do think they want to run the football. Even Buffalo doesn't have great running backs, but they still want to control the running game. They just have a quarterback that can control the run game better than anyone, pretty much outside maybe Lamar Jackson. Um, Again, it has historically been pass happy. I'd like him to be run heavy, but I don't think it will happen. Again, like I think it's interesting too, because don't forget too, Buffalo, they're an outlier because again, they don't have great running backs, but they have a freakishly athletic quarterback. I mean, who's their leading rusher. So again, I mean, I do think that they're going to have to be able to run the football and utilize both Daniel Jones and Saquon on the ground because you want to protect Daniel Jones a bit. And I do think that they play to the strengths of Josh Allen, which is not hand the ball off. Again, when you have 3 or 4 receivers that could get open and you have a quarterback that's running around and these DBs come up to try to tackle him and it opens up running space. I mean, we saw it a lot in the postseason. How many times did they get a big play or a touchdown because Allen rolled out, a defender had to come off his coverage, and the guy was wide open because, again, they were afraid Josh Allen was going to take off. Daboll's an analytic guy as well, so probably pass. I mean, again, I don't think it's a bad idea to pass, and it's a passing league, but it's how you pass. A lot of the times, even with the Bills, Josh Allen has a huge arm, but they'll take their shots, but they do a lot of the quick screen games. And I do think that helps the Giants because you have guys like Kadarius Toney, you have guys like Kenny Galladay, Saquon. You get the ball out of Daniel Jones's hand quick and let them make a play. I mean, put the ball in the best playmakers on the team and let them make a play. I mean, the Bills run a ton of screens. The Bills run a ton of quick routes, like quick hitters, quick slants, and they love the screen game. And again, I think that's why you see offensive linemen gets because they want to have good athletic linemen. So I think that also helps Daniel Jones too because he's not standing in the pocket. Because my biggest criticism is he really struggles at reading the pocket pressure. Like Daniel Jones does not have good pocket awareness. Like he doesn't have that internal clock where he can feel pressure. Like to me, like you watch Tom Brady, who's not an athletic quarterback necessarily, but when he's in the pocket, like he can sense the rusher behind him. He'll step up, he'll step back. Even like Eli Manning, you see them like manipulate the pocket because they can feel the pressure. Daniel Jones doesn't have that sense. So the faster you can get that ball out of his hand, the less risk it has, the less hits he takes, and you just put the ball in their playmakers. Tony can feast if they use him right. Yeah, again, like Kadarius Toney, like you saw it when he got space. That's where he is at his best, is in space and making plays. So again, I go back to what I was saying before. I think that this isn't great hiring. And I said the Giants needed to hit a home run in the offseason. Again, we don't know how they're going to be as a head coach and general manager, but I like that they got someone outside the organization in both positions. Someone both people have worked together. You get a guy again. You need to not draft. You need to bring in a head coach to help elevate what you need on the team. And right now, the Giants needed a coach that would elevate the offense, that would elevate the quarterback position, and someone that would either elevate their current quarterback or someone that would elevate their I'm sorry, lost the train of thought a little bit there. They need someone that will elevate either their current quarterback or their future quarterback. Looking at the Senior Bowl right now, some of the stats. I remember I talked about Daniel Falele before. The official measurements have come in on him, and I was slightly off. He's not 380 pounds. He's 387 pounds. Yeah, he's a big boy. If I was the Giants, I'd be looking at him definitely in the next round. Again, Senior Bowl going on. A lot of the guys getting their measurables done today. Dylan Parham weighing in at 313, the offensive lineman from Memphis. Just going through some of these really quick, just because these have come through in the last 20 minutes. Just kind of looking at the offensive line. Darian Kennard weighing at 324 pounds, the guard. Falali, like I said, 6'8", weighing in at 387 pounds. That's a pretty big boy right there on the offensive line. So again, Cole Strange, another one, 304 pounds. So basically, like I do think this is going to be a very fun Senior Bowl because you have a lot of good senior prospects. Like we know the underclassmen pass rushers, but again, this is going to be a really good draft for the seniors. Let's see. Dak and David Carr are like that as well. I'm interested what the Giants do because I would not also throw it out possibility that they go they try to bring in a veteran quarterback. Like I wouldn't be shocked if maybe they try to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, like give up a second round pick or maybe a third and a fifth just to have him hold down the fort for a year or two. Because again, he's a quality quarterback. I wouldn't rule that out. And again, he's not the reason I think Garoppolo makes more sense to the Giants is because he's not a huge cap hit compared to Deshaun Watson, or I know everyone's thinking of Russell Wilson. Again, they're top 5 cap hits in the entire league. I don't know how they're going to figure that out. I keep hearing Trubisky. Trubisky would be interesting. I am curious to see what happens there because I believe Buffalo's going to keep Trubisky because even though Allen has stayed healthy the last 2 years, I do worry about his running style and that he is one hit away from being out a significant amount of time. I mean, we've seen it with guys like Big Ben's. Those hits add up. So I do think they want to have an elite backup. And look, say what you want about Trubisky. Trubisky has gone to the postseason. And you have to wonder now, like with the way it went with Ryan Nagy in Chicago, we all thought it was Nagy was uplifting Trubisky, but who knows how much. And again, like Daniel Jones, I think you've gotten some good offensive coaches out of him. I mean, you basically had Jason Garrett, and I know Jason Garrett will take a lot of flack, but he developed Tony Romo and he developed Dak Prescott, and both were very good quarterbacks in the NFL. And again, I understand it wasn't a good situation with Joe Judge, but I mean, you didn't see a huge leap from Daniel Jones early in the season when he was healthy and when the Giants had their pieces. But again, like I would not hate Trubisky as like someone to push Daniel Jones next year. And again, like if you get a lot out of him, I would be happy. And one guy that I know it wouldn't be popular with Giant fans, but Gardner Minshew to me, like again, like I don't get how he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. I mean, you look at him like in his draft class, he leads his entire draft class with completions, touchdowns, touchdown to interception ratio, and yards. And he played in Jacksonville for God's sakes. I mean, we saw Trevor Lawrence this year couldn't do anything in Jacksonville, and I'm thinking it was even worse probably before with Trubisky. I mean, sorry, not Trubisky, with Minshew. And then I saw him come in and play spot starts this year with the Eagles, and I thought the Eagles were better with Minshew than Jalen Hurts. And I understand that they use Jalen Hurts in their run game, but again, I look at Gardner Minshew and what I don't think the Eagles would trade him, but again, like I look at Gardner Minshew and I go, like, I've seen him play. I've seen him operate an offense. Again, I do think he's limited. I don't think he's got the biggest arm. He's not the greatest athlete, but like there's a lot to like about, I mean, Gardner Minshew. I don't get why people don't give him an opportunity. Is it because he's a built? Is it because he's kind of a caricature? I mean, maybe that's it. But I mean, I know he's 8-14 as a star, but look where he played. I mean, just this year with Philadelphia, he started 2 games. He threw 68%, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. I mean, 68% passing. Again, 7.9 yards per attempt. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's solid. He's going to be 26. I mean, again, I don't get why he doesn't get more. I mean, he to me deserves to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Like to me, he's the better version of what we thought Baker Mayfield would be. I mean, seriously. Oh Jesus! I'm just looking at Pro Football Reference right now. Gardner Minshew, his 2 nicknames. The mustache or the jockstrap king. God, you gotta love Pro Football Reference. Of course, they have that in there. You gotta love some of these reference sites. Like they have so much information, and they have information like that where you're like, did I really need to know? Did I really need to know all that information? Jesus. Oh my God. Again, like I just feel like the Giants, if you're going to go with Jones, they need a backup plan. But again, I really like the Daboll hiring. Again, I never thought Harbaugh was going to be here. I really love Flores, but again, Flores was kind of, I didn't think it would be the best fit because I'm not sure how he would work with the GM. And in some ways, I just feel like the Giants, because again, I know he's from the Belichick tree. I just feel like the Giants just needed a fresh start. But this is the one thing I would be concerned about if I was Brian Daboll and I was this new regime is how much, and again, they can say all they want, but how much is ownership going to have a say in the player development? Because one thing I'm curious to see is even with the Jets, like the Jets, they love Sam Darnold. And I've talked to Christopher Johnson before, and he loved Sam Darnold. And he felt like they let that kid down. And I wonder, you worry if you're about the Maras, are they going to, because of how Daniel Jones has been treated, because of how it's gone for Daniel Jones, are they going to feel a responsibility to make sure it works for him? Are they going to try too hard? Like, again, if they come to the Maras and say, look, we've identified a quarterback we really like in this draft, and we're going to move on from Daniel Jones, will they sign off on that? Again, like if they have the saying, like, nope, we're running back with Daniel Jones no matter who you like in this draft, does that hurt Daboll? Because again, think about the timeline. I do think Daboll is going to get 3 years because you cannot again have a coach go 2 years. But here's the scenario. Jones plays decent, but we see he's not the answer at quarterback this year. So next year they get to pick their quarterback. Okay. But you're going to have to probably trade up a lot to get said quarterback. So then you have the rookie year, and then basically year 2, you have to figure out if that quarterback doesn't pop in year 2, you could be out of a job. So that also is a factor that has to be in play for Daboll in this front office is who's in charge of the player personnel and will ownership allow you to move off the quarterback. And again, I do think it's not a bad time to move off because again, I don't think Giant fans will care if you move off Daniel Jones now. And again, if this is only if you identify a franchise quarterback in this draft. Again, on my big board, which you can see up in the comments, I have 5 quarterbacks on there in the top 50. But I said this. I don't believe any of them would have cracked the top 5 last year. If Mac Jones was in this class, Mac Jones would either be number 1 or 2. Malik Willis might have gotten the nod over him just because of the athleticism he brings to the table. But again, He was from a very basic offense, didn't play a lot of competition. Mac Jones playing the SEC, highly accurate quarterback. And again, I like Willis a lot. I do think he's got the highest upside, but you need to find the right coach and the right system around him. I think Pickett's probably the safest quarterback, but I don't think he's got that high of a ceiling. Corral, I really like, but again, my two knocks on him, he's 190 pounds. He got injured this year. I'm worried about the durability. And again, he's coming from an offensive system where we've seen quarterbacks put up stupid numbers. Again, is it him or is it the system? That's one thing you have to worry about college football. And then my other two picks, like I really like Carson Strong, but he has a chronic knee injury. If that doesn't clear, I mean, he's had 3 knee surgeries on the right knee. I said he could go from being the first quarterback selected to be someone that's not selected in the draft if that knee doesn't check out. And then after that, like Sam Howell, I basically compared him to Baker Mayfield because he's exactly the same height, plays the exact same way as Baker Mayfield. And again, if he goes to a situation like Mac Jones, like if he went to Pittsburgh and they just asked him to game manage with that defense, could he work? Yeah. But if you're asking him to uplift a roster, I don't see him doing that. Flores might get the Texans job again. If I was Brian Flores, I would take the year off before getting the Texans job. I mean, that's just a mess. I mean, Culley exceeded expectations. I thought the Texans were going to win 1 game, and Culley got them to 4 wins with Davis Mills, and he gets fired. So again, I just would not trust. The Texans are just such a mess. Where do you see Russell? I don't see Russell leaving. I would put the quarterbacks moving as the following. Number 1's Deshaun if the legal situation gets fixed. Number 2 is Jimmy Garoppolo because I do think they want to get moving to Trey Lance. Rodgers, I just put slightly because again, he's better off in Green Bay. But who knows where he's coming from. I just feel like in Seattle, if push came to shove, they understand how great Russell is. I almost feel like they would move on from Pete Carroll. And part of me was surprised they didn't fire Pete Carroll after the season they had. I really am. I really thought that they were going to try to make a move. Like again, like if Russell Wilson came to Seattle and said, "Look, I don't want to play for Pete. I really want Brian Flores. I think he's a great coach. I think he's exactly what they need." I do think that Seattle would cater to him. Giants option. Sam, like if you read my comment on him, what's the even more terrifying thing about the Baker comparison? He's basically Baker Mayfield out of rap sheet. But you look at pull up a picture of Baker Mayfield and pull up a picture of Sam Howell. They look like they're freaking brothers. Like I swear, like I even said in my note, like in my big board, like this quarterback class was almost impossible to find comps to because there's all these guys are really small. Kenny Pickett there isn't a guy I really think fits with Kenny Pickett. Carson Strong, like I can't really think of anyone coming out. Like again, there's bigger quarterbacks, but he's not mobile. I mean, maybe more like a Ryan Mallett or something, but again, like when I was thinking of comps, I'm like Sam Howell, Baker Mayfield, like not only do they play the same way, they have the same body type, the same athleticism. They look like they're freaking brothers. Like I swear to God, like if we found out that the Mayfields had a secret son that somehow got switched at birth in the hospital, like he would be the missing Mayfield, basically. I mean, that's how much they look like. It's terrifying. But to answer KD's question, I don't think Russell's going anywhere. And again, I think if he was going anywhere, it would have been New Orleans. But now with Sean Payton out of New Orleans, again, his list was the Broncos and I guess the Giants. But even still, like, I don't see how the Giants can afford like almost over a $35 million cap hit, even if he takes a pay cut. And even with Wilson, again, like, I just feel like he could have so much more control in Seattle. Like they should be more beholden to him. But we'll see. I mean, there could be a lot of movement this offseason. Yeah, for Giants, like this is literally I put bonus Sam Howell 51. This comp will likely scare teams away. The comp Baker Mayfield. It's scary how similar they are in build, athleticism, accuracy, arm strength. What's even scarier, it looks like that looks like they could be brothers. The only difference is Hal didn't have the off the field issues before the draft process. So again, it's it was scary. Like how how much they looked alike. Like again, like I was just amazed how again, like seriously, pull up a picture of Sam Howe and it, it, yeah, like again, like I'm just amazed how much they look alike. It's kind of terrifying. I mean, again, if you want to check out my read, he's 51 on my big board after Carson Strong at 50. If you want to go check that out again, link is at Rich Sports Talk. And of course, follow us on Twitter for all of our updates. Just to say that. Yeah, Russell, again, if they're going to move Russell, they're going to need a stupid offer. Like they're going to need like 3 or 4 first round picks. And again, I feel it. I feel Deshaun's gonna be the first one to move it. The legal issues clear up because again, everyone knows the Texans want to get rid of him. Everyone knows he wants out of Houston. So I do think that's the most likely move to be made first. So we'll have to see about that. If he's the first domino to fall. And again, I think Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I know Giant fans would probably hate it, but Jimmy Garoppolo, Uh, again, like I don't think he'd be a bit of an upgrade, and I do think you could get away with him for at least 2 or 3 years, like if you wanted to develop a quarterback. Um, but again, I think a lot of it's also gonna be on the ownership. Like, where does the ownership view the Giants right now? Do they view them as a close to a playoff team like last year, which I thought was a bit of a mirage? Or did they view this as a rebuilding process? I do think that that's going to be the big key. Because again, if they feel that they're close, maybe they go get Jimmy Garoppolo. Hopefully, they can win a couple more games. Again, this isn't a great division. So if the Giants feel like Garoppolo gives them the second best quarterback in this division, and even if the Cowboys win this division, I mean, the wild card, like if you win 9 or 10 games, you're going to be in the wild card. And if you feel you can sweep with Garoppolo, the Eagles and Washington, that gives you 4 wins. And if you feel he gives you the better quarterback or at least a chance at other games, I do think that he's an option. But again, guys, would love your opinions. Put in the chat what you think of the Brian Daboll signing. Of course, comment what videos you would like to see in the future. We will be having our first Giants mock draft soon. We'll do a 3-round one because again, I do a full 7, but I only do that after free agency because again, you get a clear picture of the team's needs, especially on day 3 of the draft. The lot is the plugging holes, it's filling out the depth of the roster. So I do wait until do the full 7. And also by that time, you get the combine information, you get senior day, you can see who's rising, who's falling, who's performing well. Because again, like even today at the Senior Bowl, they're saying Kenny Pickett refused to get his hand size because they're saying he might have some of the smallest hands that have ever been measured for an NFL quarterback. And again, if you're a team that plays in bad weather, you probably want someone that can grip that football. So as again, we're starting to get the first senior measurables starting to come in from the Senior Bowl. So again, we will have updates on that. Any other question before we head out? Yep, that will be coming soon. Jets mock draft will be coming within the next 2 weeks. I've been working on that. A lot of things in the works, a couple of independent videos that don't necessarily relate to the NFL. Good to try to do some NHL content later this week, which I think will be very interesting, especially if you're a Jersey fan. But again, just to reiterate, I said this with the last couple of Giants videos. I felt they needed to hit a home run this offseason and that they had little margin for error. And so far, I think they've hit on the best GM candidate for them. And I personally think they hit on the best head coaching candidate for them. So again, there's still a lot of work to do. How do they address the cap? How they address the free agency period with the limited resources and how they attack the draft. To me, the draft's the biggest one because I think they're going to be limited. Yeah, that's the rumor I heard about 8.25 inch hands. I mean, those are tiny and not great. And again, I mean, I don't love really any of the quarterbacks in this draft. Like, I almost feel better off taking one of them in the second round, trying to develop them for a year and see what they are. I really do not feel, but again, I keep seeing all these articles. Oh, we're not going to see one go in the top 15. We're not going to see anyone go in the top 20. There's going to be 3 or 4 quarterbacks that go in the first round. There's always is. Again, because of the financial implications and the teams that there's so many teams that need a quarterback. And the way the new rookie wage scale works is if you hit on the rookie, you get him on a cheap deal. And again, like you can recycle. So if we've seen it in the NFL, if it's not working by the year 2, you just move on, you go to the next one. So again, I do think that the turnover for the rookie quarterbacks is getting shorter. But I mean, you're going to see quarterbacks again. So many teams do quarterbacks. Just look in this division. Washington's going to need a quarterback. I don't think that they can go back again with Heineke. I think Heineke is what it is. He would be an elite backup, can win you a couple games, but he's not a full 17-game starter. The NFC right now. I mean, think about this. One of the quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game is likely going to be on a new team next year. That just tells you the state of their quarterbacks. I mean, think about it. The best quarterbacks in the NFC. We don't know what's happening with Rodgers. Is he retiring? Is he staying? Is Brady retiring? We don't know that yet. Again, like, tell me who the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC are that you know are going to be on their team next year. You don't know about Russell. You don't know about Aaron Rodgers. We still don't know about Brady, and those are the top 3. We Dak. Jesus. Dak in the NFC South, I was like, ugh. I just went through that. I'm like, Matt Ryan, but he's not really top. I don't think he's top. I don't think Atlanta's that good. So I'm going to keep him off the list. Goff, no. Ooh, Jesus. Justin Fields, NFC North bad. I meant Stafford, Kyler Murray. I mean, again, like, I mean, again, if you, I know it sounds crazy, but I almost feel like if you put Jimmy Garoppolo on the Giants next year and he started 15 games, I think the Giants could be a wild card team. For God's sakes, I don't think Cousins is that good. Kyler, I agree with Stafford. Again, I was just going through like who you think are going to be really good quarterbacks. Again, we don't know who the Vikings head coach is going to be. I mean, there's so much to go into that. Again, like I know this is going to sound crazy, but like if the Giants could trade like a 3 and a 5, because I don't think they want to give that valuable too, but if they could trade a 3 and a future 5 or a 3 and a future 4 for Jimmy Garoppolo, I wouldn't hate it for next year. Again, like I don't really believe in Daniel Jones, but I mean, I'm looking at their opponents next year for the Giants. I mean, the Eagles, Washington. I mean, Garoppolo, I think, would be better than Justin Fields in year 2. The Lions, I don't love Jared Goff. Carolina's a freaking. I mean, look at the Giants' home schedule, just the home games. If the Giants had Jimmy Garoppolo, I'll be generous and say it's a push with the Eagles. Cowboys have the better quarterback. We don't know what Washington's is, but Garoppolo's probably better than anyone they have. We don't know what Fields is, but probably I would give Garoppolo now. I mean, the Lions, Goff maybe, but they're still a mess. I mean, the Panthers definitely, the Texans definitely, Carson Wentz is mess, and then you have Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm just looking at their schedule. I mean, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Seattle. I mean, I think Garoppolo could win you 9 games with that schedule potentially. I really do. But we'll see. So a lot to talk about. More Giants content coming your way. More Giants drafts. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss anything. Tell us to your friends. Follow us on Rich Sports Talk on Twitter. And, of course, we'll have more Giants content coming, especially mock drafts and ample draft content on the way. But as always, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and we will see you soon. And, again, Giants get their head man, and I do think they hit this one out of the park.